if you've got the impetus to start this thing, you better be ready to give your life to it. I mean, it's one of those things that's going to eat your life pretty good, Um, and that's really the hardest part about this thing is that this doesn't sleep. This business does not sleep. The beer never sleeps. I want to put that on a t-shirt.
Welcome back to the Brews Line Roadshow. I'm your host, Daryl, and today we're in Fort Lauderdale, a little cooler day in Fort Lauderdale. We're at Tarpon River Brewing Company in Fort Lauderdale. We're with Adam Fine. Say hello, Adam.
Hi, how's everybody doing out there?
Well, hey, thanks for having us today. Let's just jump right into it. Let's talk a little bit about the history of Tarpon River Brewing.
Okay, so I've been in the beer business for about 28 years, 29 years, something like that. Long story we'll talk about in a few minutes, but the actual history of Tarpon River Brewing was wanted to start a brewery when I first moved back to Florida, got sidetracked with some other beer projects, and eventually came back around to wanting to open up a brewery. We were contract brewing before that and, getting our beers out there. And then in 2016, 2017, we met some people and decided to get Tarpon River started, partnered up with some people from the Riverside Market and also the restaurant people who own several restaurants in the Fort Lauderdale area and Miami. Started brewing, we got this lease in 2017 and started brewing in 2018.
Yeah, now for people obviously who might not be familiar with the area, where did the name come from?
So the main river that flows through the city of Fort Lauderdale is the New River. And off the New River shoots a small river called the Tarpon River. And that's where many fishing people were fishing for tarpon back in the day. And there was big tarpon in the river. And there's a lot of big tarpon down in the intercoastal waterway around here and things like that. So you can find some pretty big tarpon down in 15th Street Fisheries.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're going to show some pictures and we have a gallery out on the site. I'd say an underdeveloped gallery, but we're working on it on the site. And beautiful place you got here. And we'll talk about kind of describing the place in just a bit. But before we do that, you mentioned your history of brewing. So tell me a little bit about that personal story about Adam.
So I started brewing professionally. I was a home brewer for many years. And then I started brewing professionally for a brew pub chain called Hops. They were a restaurant brewery chain called Hops. They had about 25 units in Florida at the time. And I was brewing with them. And at the same time, I was trying to start my own brand. And, I had some recipes, homebrew recipes that I wanted to get out there and get made. Wound up realizing that the pitfall of South Florida was the distribution business down here. None of the distributors knew what craft beer was. They, everything was microbrewed beer and they were big on the imports and there was no place for craft beer here. Even though there were a few craft breweries that were opening up, they didn't understand how to really market it and get it out there. And we realized if we built the brewery at the time, there's no law for tasting rooms here. So you couldn't have a tasting room. You'd have to just sell your beer to a distributor. And we felt like we were going to go out of business quick if we opened a brewery and had no tasting room and the distributors weren't going to be able to help us out. There were no small distributors. That was just some big distributors that just didn't get it at all. So we went a different route and we opened up a distribution company and then went to one of these other breweries and contract brewed our beer at the time. I started with a brand called the 11 Brown Ale. That was my first beer that we produced commercially, and then added Native Lager to the list. And I was out there, selling and delivering and doing everything myself. I was a one-man distributor at the time, and slowly over time, I met some people in the industry. Fred Forsley from Shipyard Brewing, Sam Calgione from Dogfish Head. A lot of other small breweries that were also fighting to get into Florida. They just had no opportunities. And we started a company my distribution company was called Fresh Beer at the time. And my brewing company,
appropriate name.
Yeah, my brewing company was called Native Brewing Company. And, my products were native brewing products that I was selling through my distributor Fresh Beer. So I was basically buying beer from manufacturers as a distributor, and then going out and marketing, selling it myself. As I started meeting people in the industry, they were like, well, why don't you carry our beer? I don't have a distributor in South Florida. And I'm like, sure, why not? Which, I started slowly building a portfolio. And I was I was actually brewing some of my beers with Shipyard at their brewery in Orlando. They had a brewery in the Orlando airport. So I used to fly up to Orlando, brew beer, and fly home. Some funny stories around that, some kind of sad, actually, stories around that. But we were doing pretty good, and slowly, bit by bit, building up. I started hiring salesmen, I started hiring drivers, and then in the next 10 years, from 1999 is when I started until 2009, I had built a pretty substantial distributor, carrying brands from all over the country, all the craft brands from all over the country, while the big giant distributors slept on it. We had a great reputation. People loved working with us. We had a great team. I had great salespeople working for me, great people doing deliveries. We were known as the beer pimps. We were pimping our beer all over South Florida, and just doing great stuff, doing lots of beer festivals and having a lot of fun with it. And finally, all of a sudden, the big distributors, wait a second.
We're missing out on something.
What's going on here? All this craft beer stuff. We thought it was just a speck on the wall, and now it's not a speck on the wall. So they started really paying attention to what I was doing and started, coming and talking to me about, purchasing brands or purchasing the company. And a few things happened, a few deals came and went, and we eventually wound up selling the company to a distributor out of West Palm Beach called Brown Distributing. They hired everybody that worked for me.
Wow, that was great, huh?
Yeah. They hired me as well.
It's always good to have a job, right?
Yeah. So I felt like there was still time to steward this craft beer thing forward. It also gave me, they brought my brands in too. So I had the opportunity to go out and sell and market my own brands, and while working for them. But they handled all the logistics. And, we had gotten to the point at that point where we were in all the craft beer places. We were, if you were selling craft beer in South Florida, we were selling to you. The next big thing was Publix. And if you know anything about Publix in South Florida, there's over 300 Publixes in South Florida. It's a big animal. And you have to be at these stores all the time, and you have to merchandise the stores. And it was just one of those things that we were either going to have to put a lot of money into the business and try and grow it for Publix, or we were going to sell. So, right. We sold to a distributor who already knew how to deal with Publix, knew how to, think to get the products out there. And we just kept growing the company, and they put fuel on the fire, basically. And, over the next 5 years, we grew the company like 100% year over year.
That's
for 5
awesome.
years straight. They wound up actually taking over a lot of distribution in the north part of Florida out of our territory. Our initial territory. And, they grew their company for a long time, and kept most of my employees and hired new employees. And we just kept grooming people to sell craft beer and, jumping on board. And then eventually I left to start this brewery and, to get back to where I had started from. And that was to start Tarpon River.
Yeah, that's definitely a different story than many of them I hear coming from the sales side, from the brewing side back to the sales side, back to the brewing side.
Well, it's I will add that having done it the way I did it, it gave me a real appreciation for the distribution business, how it works. All the moving parts that go into distributing beer, sales, and all that stuff, and line cleaning and delivery and inventory and warehousing and all that stuff. It's a lot of breweries that go into the business, they don't have a lot of respect for the distributors that are out there, just because they don't know what goes into it.
Yeah, what they're thinking is, I'm making less money.
Right, exactly.
I'm making less money, and to some extent, that's true.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Because certainly, as you mentioned, having a tap room, tap room is, you're going to make the most money, right? On selling a pint in a tap room. Right?
100%.
Yeah.
So, there's no question of it. The tap room is where the business is at for us.
Yeah. And every step down that line, people are doing more work for you, as you point out, but that work doesn't come for free.
That's correct.
So, you open up, you get going on here, and you open up the whole tap room and facility. I always love to ask this question about what are some of the strange or surprising things that have happened in the brewery. And I get everything from tanks exploding to what are some things that maybe to the breweries being haunted. I've been in a lot of haunted breweries
I've heard the haunting stories from a couple of my brewers. They kind of get here a lot earlier than I do, and sometimes 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning they're here, and I've heard some funny stories from them, but I've never had anything approach this building's been here since 1929. So if it's going to be haunted, anything in Fort Lauderdale, it's going to be this building.
Most likely, yeah.
This building was originally a horse and barn stable for the guy who paved the streets of Fort Lauderdale with asphalt.
No.
So, he kept his horses. If you go into the building, the outer shell of the building, you'll see where the stalls were. There was windows for each of the horses. And, it just has a lot of history here. And it's one of the older buildings probably still standing in Fort Lauderdale. Fort Lauderdale's been knocking down buildings left and right. And there really isn't a whole lot of history left in the town. We do occupy a pretty unique space. Things that I didn't expect to get into. I comes back to a story that I think that I heard from another brewer, and it's like everything breaks all the time. When you go into this business, even if you buy brand new equipment, and you get started and you're going, it's like there's constantly something that's gonna go wrong for you. So you're constantly you need to be on top of stuff, maintaining it. And even if you are on top of it, maintaining it, it's still going to break. So
you got to be plumber, electrician, all that stuff.
100%. And, we started, we're a little bit different than a lot of breweries around here. Most of them have just the tasting room selling beer, and then they bring in food trucks or so to speak. But we added the restaurant component because we felt that was important, to provide food for people while they're drinking and entertaining themselves. And, we have a lot of things going on here all the time. I think one of the biggest surprises for me and what we didn't think about when we first opened the place was the level of private parties and things and catering that we can do as a brewery.
Yeah, we're in a nice little. We'll get a picture of this, but we're in like a nice little meeting room here too.
Yeah, well, when I first walked in, you were also in our barrel room, which we host, parties of 75 people or more, and then even the rest of the building, we've sold out the entire building before for events. So,
and I think that's one of the things I've been hearing a lot of is that you got to do a little bit more. It's I was talking to a brewery that said, it used to be open the door, and if you had some good IPAs, that's all people were really looking for. But now, as you mentioned, food, events, and are you guys family friendly here too?
Oh, we're very family friendly. We're dog friendly. And speaking of events, that's something we've done since the very beginning. Was we do a lot of weekly events. We host a bike ride on Monday. Every Monday, there's anywhere from 60 to 100 bikers that show up. Our run club pushes 200 people sometimes, at times even bigger. That's on Tuesdays. We have a yoga class. We have music bingo. We have trivia. We have music on the weekends. We have flea markets. The flea market was a nice addition that we added pretty early on. We have an 11,000 square foot building with some nice parking lot in the back. And we work with this girl, Carly, who puts on what's called the Flamingo Flea, and it's been recognized by the Fort Lauderdale magazine as the best market.
Wow! And you might get to sell some beer while all those people.
Yeah, just a little bit. It's actually a great event. She curates about 35 vendors that set up tents and tables all throughout the brewery and the parking lot, and people, brings in some musicians. So it's, there's some music playing during the day, and it's a wonderful day to spend at a brewery and hanging out. You have some beers, you have some food, you listen to some music, you do a little shopping, and it's just
support local.
Support local, yeah, absolutely. And these are all local. We call them makers. They're actually really talented people that put together some clothing and some jewelry and plants and dog treats and all kinds of great stuff.
So for people who are coming down to visit, how often does that happen? How often does she run that?
That's every other month. It's typically on a Sunday. Every other month. We did one in January, so I believe the next one is in March.
Okay, that one might be crowded. I heard it gets a little busy in town in March.
Yeah, spring break is coming our way. Yeah, it's a good time of year. We also have our anniversary party in March, so that'll be a fun day.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do all kinds of events, to keep. People aren't looking anymore just to go out and have a bite to eat or just to go out someplace and have a beer. They want to have entertainment. They want to be entertained when they go places, and absolutely, it's something you want to
Oh,
provide for people. We're also very community driven, so we're very well connected with the local neighborhood associations. We're connected very well with we have the Broward County Courthouse down the street, so a lot of attorneys, and the Broward Bar. A lot of attorneys come in here on a regular. The marine industry as well. We've had marine industry events here on a regular. So, yeah.
Well, I guess that's the kind of the next thing I was kind of thinking about is give a little bit of description of kind of the area, not so much Fort Lauderdale at large, but kind of your area right here where you guys are located.
This is an area that's been it's been pretty until recently it's been very commercial. We're next to a propeller company. They fix giant propellers all the time. We're next to a marine electronics company. I mean, that's the second biggest industry in Fort Lauderdale is the marine industry. You can't come down here and not notice all the giant yachts that are around. And, so this area has always been driven. One of our next door neighbors he does upholstery for boats, and, and the different parts of boats, the awnings and the things that are on boats. So you have that marine industry that's been pretty much here for a long time. But what's happening is, and we're kind of transitioning a little bit more. There's been 3 giant condos that have gone up in the last year and a half. Next to us along the river. We're not too far from the new river. The neighborhoods are developing. You see new businesses opening up. We've got a great coffee shop across the street. We got a cool little bar down the street. We've got a nice wine shop down the street. You've got some gyms. We've got a bagel shop. I mean, so things are slowly developing around us. A lot of cities like to bring a brewery into a neighborhood because they see when they do that, then they see other businesses grow around. We got barber shops. I've got a hair salon. I mean, a couple hair salons actually.
Yeah, you're seeing that model, kind of 2 ways: inside some of the cities, and then also in small towns. Where I'm based up in Indiana, we have a lot of breweries popping up, and they're the only game in town.
Right.
And then things start coming around them, like
exactly.
you said.
Yeah.
Because they become destinations, because it's a little bit different than just running to the grocery store and, grabbing a 6-pack.
I think one of the things that happens is, we put on a lot of, like I said, a lot of events. There's a lot of people that come here on a regular night for whether it be run club or just to have a beer or whatever. And when you've got that draw of people coming to this area, other businesses see that, and they see that the opportunity is there. You see the traffic coming to the neighborhood. It opens up opportunities for people, and I think that's what makes that special.
Yeah, it sounds great, and we're going to wander around a little bit when I get done here, just kind of check out the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your team members here. And, obviously we've talked about your history. You've had a lot of people working for you over your career. In your mind, especially in the tap room hospitality part of it, what does it take to be a good team member at Tarpon River?
Well, I think, these days, to find people that are dedicated to what you're doing, that believe in the dream of what you're doing, that believe in the business that you're building it's difficult to find. It's a challenge to find those people, and to find people that are into beer, that want to talk about beer, that are into craft beer. Curating those people is challenging too. I mean, we have a restaurant, and so people that come to work for us are interested in being a server. They might not necessarily be into craft beer, but turning them into craft beer folks is what we have to do. We want people that are into craft beer and want to talk about craft beer and want to turn people on to what we're making here.
Yeah, so we'll switch over. We'll talk a little bit about the beer. One of my favorite subjects. I don't know, probably one of yours.
Yeah, sure. I could talk about it all day.
Talk about your kind of the approach here, you and your team, and creating new beers, and just maybe some unique techniques or ingredients that you guys do here that people might not find other places.
So our brewery it's interesting. We bought a used brewery back when we first started, and the brewery was really made for making lagers. It's a 2-vessel German system. It's able to do step mashing decoctions really fine lagers. We try and break it every day.
Well, it sounded like from earlier that you were succeeding.
Yeah. We do IPAs, we do hazy IPAs, we do big stouts, we do sour beers, we do fruited beers, we do all kinds of stuff. I'm not a guy that really wants to stand on one type of beer. I want to have different beers for everybody.
Yeah.
I feel that anybody who walks in might not like a lager, might not like an IPA. So we do, we'll do a fruited wheat ale that's modeled after a tiki cocktail. We've got one on right now called Tiki Bay Cooler. It's a coconut, hibiscus, pineapple in it. It's and passion fruit, I think, is the other ingredient on there. So, but then we do a traditional West Coast IPA, Hop Stash, or we'll do our two biggest sellers are our deflated hazy IPA, New England style hazy IPA, and Honey Love, which is our honey Imperial Cream Ale, which I don't think anybody does. It is a 9 to 9.5% Imperial Cream Ale. Yeah, but it tastes
9 to 9.5 in cream ale usually don't
go together. It's got a ton of orange blossom honey in it, and that gives it a very unique flavor and character to the beer. And people really dig that beer a lot.
Yeah.
And that actually came out of I was running a craft beer store, and we were home brewing some recipes out of that craft beer store, and one of our neighbors came by and he said, I've got a honeybee hive in my backyard and I've got all this honey. You guys want to make a beer with it? And I went, sure, why not? So we came up with a recipe and here we are, 8 years later and cranking this beer out on a weekly basis. Yeah.
So that kind of leads to the next question. Is there a beer that you're most proud of?
Well, I think, I like a lot of different beers. So I'm all over the wall, IPAs, lagers, stouts, everything. But I think, when you get down to doing a really fine lager, I think our Dortmunder export, which is called Run That Dog, is probably one of my favorite beers that we brew. I look forward to it every year. Either that or our fest beer for Oktoberfest that we brew once a year. Really just such a drinkable, easy drinking, great flavor beer, and just the quality that we put into it, the decoction and the quality of everything that comes out of the malts that we use is just top notch, I believe.
Yeah, I think lagers are definitely making a comeback.
Mm-hmm.
Find we're talking more and more about them with brewers and drinking more and more of them with brewers, and sometimes without.
Yeah.
But as we look at kind of your plans for the future, where do you see Tarpon River down the road?
Well, I mean, for us, our tasting room has really kind of grown into, like I said, a community space. We people around town know us. Our focus in the last year has been really on getting our beers out into the local market and growing our brand out in the market and distribution, which obviously I have a lot of history with. So, we've been getting our beers into different restaurants and bars around town and just growing that brand name and building that brand is really, important to us right now. So, yeah.
In terms of, as I was coming down here, obviously doing some research on breweries in the area, how do you guys do anything special to attract tourists? Obviously, you're really entrenched in the community, but what about visitors? Do you guys do anything around that?
I don't think we do anything specifically to target the tourists. I think tourists that are beer drinkers will find us overall. I mean, our social media is pretty prevalent. We do a lot of social media. We do a little bit of targeting for our sent down at the hotels and things like that, where we've got some concierge programs that we work with, where if a concierge tells about our brewery, they get a little bit of a spiff for
that's cool.
helping us out, pointing people in our direction. But we don't really do anything like mass market advertising in terms of targeting a tourist market. The tourist market's a bit up and down too. Here, right now tourism is the peak, but when you get to August and September, there's not many tourists here.
Not many people here.
Yeah, so it's kind of one of those things where you kind of can't rely on it for too much. We really like to have our regulars that are coming, our local people that come and hang out with us and spend money on a regular basis and drink our beers and come for the food and come for the entertainment and are part of our family.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that's, the people who keep coming back, that's like lifeblood, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to switch gears.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take you out of the brewery for a minute.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about what you do when you're not entrenched in the brewery, that couple hours a week or whatever it might be.
I mean, I do like to bike ride. I mean, that's one of the reasons that we have a bike ride on Monday. Biking is definitely, I like to be out and about. Traveling and eating out at restaurants, I think, is two of our favorite things to do. Wish could travel more, but brewery's got me here tied down pretty good. Going around town and then just enjoying the different aspects. Like to go to the beach, enjoy the water down here, kayaking.
Cool.
And some of the outdoor sports that we can do around the area.
A lot of our listeners may be thinking about getting into the business. Now, you've approached a couple parts of the business. So what advice would you give to someone who's maybe passionate about craft beer and feels like they want to work in the business?
Well, do you mean somebody who wants to start a business or somebody who wants to work in the business?
Either or. Let's go with someone who wants to start a brewery. Let's go with that first, and then maybe some other avenues that they might think about.
Don't do it. No, it's look, this is a tough business. It's 24/7. We're open 7 days a week. You're working early in the morning till the evenings. It's, if you've got the impetus to start this thing, you better be ready to give your life to it. I mean, it's one of those things that's going to eat your life. Really, the hardest part about this thing is that this doesn't sleep. This business does not sleep. The beer never sleeps. I want to put that on a t-shirt.
That sounds like a good logo.
Yeah, because I mean, you're constantly, you walk away at the end of the day, you've brewed beer and you put it in the tank and it's fermenting away and it's going all night long. Something goes wrong, you got a problem. You've got bad beer. If your chiller goes out in the middle of the night, it can be a problem. So you have to really understand that this business does not stop. And, and that's just here.
Yep.
I mean, we were talking about
that's on the manufacturing
side. So then you talk about the distribution side and the customers and what they need and their needs. It becomes a whole nother animal. From the distribution side, that side never ever sleeps. Their customers calling you, I can't get this, or this line is clogged, or this beer doesn't taste right, or I got this keg and it's leaking, or my beer's not pouring. One of my favorite stories is this guy I knew when we were in the distribution business, and he said, a customer called him up one night and said, my beer's not pouring. You need to get over here right now. Your beer's not pouring. And he jumped in his car and drove 45 minutes to the place, and he looked at the beer and looked at the system and flipped the CO2 on the tank on. Guys.
That would help.
Yeah, he goes to the guy, I wish I was in the lobster business. He goes, why do you wish you were in the lobster business? Because he goes, if your oven broke down, you wouldn't be calling me.
That's right. That's right. One final question.
Sure.
My favorite one.
Mm-hmm.
What beer should I try today?
Honey Love. I mean, that's, we talked about it briefly for a minute there. I think that's our flagship kind of specialty beer. I think people, that's one of our, people know us because of that beer. So I think if you haven't had that beer, that's definitely something you should try.
Well, I haven't heard of a beer like that before, so let's give it a try.
All right.
Okay, we're back. And in my hand is a whole bunch of Honey Love.
Nice.
Tell us a little bit more about what makes this special.
So this is a Imperial Cream Ale, which nobody makes an Imperial Cream Ale. It's a cream ale base, so it's got rice and it's got corn in it, which gives it that nice, very light flavor. But it's also made with a lot of orange blossom honey. So on top of this very light beer, you get this beautiful aroma of orange blossoms and then a nice sweet finish to the beer. And it's deadly deceiving because it's so light and so easy to drink that you don't taste the 9 or 9.5% that this beer is. So people are like, oh, this tastes like, a nice light, easy drinking cream ale or lager. And next thing they know, they try and stand up and they're like, whoa, what just happened? So,
yeah, I mean, like I said, I said earlier, you don't usually hear 9.5 and cream ale in the same sentence. So,
yep.
Well, hey, Adam, I want to thank you for welcoming me to Tarpon River today and spending some time with us. I tell folks all the time that usually my podcast is the first visit, but it's never the last. So I'm looking forward to coming in and having a little bit more of this when I'm not on the clock, so to speak. But appreciate you. Cheers, buddy. The Brews Line Roadshow is a production of The Brews Line and presented by Tagabrew USA. Theme music for the Brews Line Roadshow is provided by Mikey Garrett of the band Fever Dream. You can find out more about the Brews Line at brewsline.com.